Chapter 2: The Deception That We Are Post-Colonial. Australia is an independent sovereign nation which began as a settler colonial project. Now, it's contested when exactly we became independent, and some Australians might even be confused to hear that we are. After all, we had a failed referendum on becoming an independent republic in 1999, and the idea has been largely abandoned since. Our independence is technical. We are independent members of the Commonwealth. Our head of state is the Crown. We are ruled by King Charles III of Australia. Now you may be wondering, what are the odds that the King of England and the King of Australia have the same name? Well, you wouldn't believe it, but it's actually the same person. But that little semantic difference of Australia makes us independent, apparently. Well, I contend that Australia is in reality still a colony, which pains me to say as I love my country and I want it to be better, but I have to acknowledge the reality. We are not who we think we are. Now, the head of the empire is not Britain anymore, it's America. After World War II, when the British Empire proved itself unable to militarily defend its colonies, but the United States could, the head of the empire changed. Now, they have a special relationship where they see themselves as co-equal heads of the empire. However, America has the largest military in the world and is absolutely the one in charge. During World War II, Imperial Japan bombed Darwin, the event. So our government has since seen the protection of the American military as necessary for its survival. As such, our foreign policy is essentially whatever the American government wants it to be. Even critical parts of our domestic policy are determined by American geopolitical interests. Our country is not run for us. You may argue that this makes us a client state, not a colony, but we are still run like a colony. Colonies are run to have their resources harvested and their wealth sent back overseas. Australia's main exports are raw resources, with little in the way of processing or value added. The resources are usually taken without royalties or compensation, with the profits going to transnational corporations that pay no taxes here and offshore the wealth to tax havens where we will never get it back. We resist building long-term infrastructure that would benefit us. We have one of the greatest solar potentials of anywhere in the world, and we're largely avoiding using it, choosing instead to continue expanding natural gas extraction. We do this despite the professed concern for climate change, hypocritically making us one of the worst per capita polluters in the world. Why do we do this? Because the United States has unfriendly nations with massive reserves of gas that they can profit from. In order to keep them from profiting from their resources, we flood the market with gas so cheap that it decreases the global market value. The downside from keeping the US's unfriendlies from profiting from their resources is that we can't profit from them either. In fact, Japan is building up their economic power by reselling Australian gas for a profit. Adding to the ridiculousness is how expensive Australian gas is for us to buy domestically. We could probably import our own gas from a foreign nation for cheaper than what we pay for it at home. Make that make sense. The thing about high prices is that it acts as a justification for expanding new gas extraction, claiming that it will lower prices, but it never does because it's always exported. The issue for us is that even though we have two major parties to choose from, they both capitulate to America. The Liberal Party has the identity of colonial Australia. They are happy to be the good colony managers. Good economic managers. And for decades, the Labour Party has been too afraid to think independently. After the allegedly CIA-backed coup that oversaw the dismissal of Labour Prime Minister Gough Whitlam in 1975, the Labour Party has seemingly been allergic to independent thought. The last competent leader we had was Labour Prime Minister Kevin Rudd, and even he was ousted from leadership. For Australians, our electoral choices are essentially between cowards and collaborators. And the current Labour Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is doing his best to show that Labour can lick boot just as well as the Liberals. In 2017, then US Republican President Donald Trump declared China was the United States' strategic rival. In response, then Australian Liberal Prime Minister Scott Morrison, seen here being a smug wanker, likewise declared China to be our strategic rival, despite being our largest two-way trading partner. We import more from China and export more to China than any other nation. China is largely responsible for our economic prosperity, yet we declared them to be our rival. Why? Because the US did. Morrison also signed us up to AUKUS, which I have spoken about before. It is the worst deal in Australian history. Albanese then expanded AUKUS so that now we will be taking US and UK nuclear waste and storing it on our soil. And in this latest junket to kiss the ring, our government has agreed to invest an additional almost $1 trillion from our superannuation retirement funds into the American economy, which is in a massive bubble at the moment. And when it bursts, it will make the 2008 global financial crisis look trivial. Trump has been making big claims about trillions of dollars in foreign investment, and so the lapdog of Australia writes a big check. We are a colony, and we are being harvested. Thanks, Albo. You're really looking out for our best interests. Now, if you study international politics, you might be aware that the US is shifting the language of the Pacific region. In order to de-emphasize the role of China, we're shifting the language of Asia Pacific to Indo-Pacific, with India now at the helm, which really recontextualizes what happened in 2023 when, during a state visit, Prime Minister Albanese addressed Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in front of a stadium of people and told him he was the boss. Now, some people argue that I'm missing important context, that Albanese was referring to Modi selling more seats at the stadium than the American musician Bruce Springsteen, who is known as the boss. It was just a joke, a funny little reference. Do you think that's what it was? Do you think that that's what Modi heard when the Prime Minister of Australia called him the boss? It's an excuse. It's marketing. Modi heard the intended message. He is our boss because the US wants it that way. So things are not looking good for us. Our government is hamstrung by political ideology with no expressed will to change it. Our people are largely politically disengaged, and even if we, the people, wanted change, the government, Liberal or Labour, represents the interests of a foreign nation over its own people. What can we do? There have been regularly occurring pro-Palestine marches in Australia, calling for an end to the genocide and for Australia to stop sending Israel weapons components that are enabling it. The thing is, though, the Labour government feels no pressure from this. They know they won't face an electoral backlash. The Liberal alternative is even more in favour of Israel. Labour is the lesser of two evils. They know it, and they know the protesters know it too. There's no pressure to be better in a two-party system when the only alternative is perceived as a worse option.